Are annuities good, bad, or ugly? It really depends on your needs and what specific type of annuity you are looking at. Join us as we talk about the different types of annuities that you could be looking at and how they could be benefiting or harming you on Consider This Program. Hello and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Jamie Burton.
And I'm Daren Hardesty.
So great to have you here today, Daren. Today we are looking at annuities. This is a big topic of conversation because we see a lot of families come in that are holding an annuity, have already purchased an annuity, or are really considering if an annuity makes sense for them because they've heard a lot of talk around annuities saying that it's guaranteed income for them and it's safe and it's what they need to be able to continue having that income once they get to retirement. What we have to have the conversation around is that it's not that simple. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that go into annuities and whether it makes sense to buy an annuity and what the different options are that are offered in the annuity and what that's going to cost them to make that decision.
Absolutely.
When we are looking at those decisions for our families, what direction do we have to take that conversation first and foremost?
Yeah, it's a question we see a lot. A lot of our families that come to Financial Enhancement Group are well established. Mm-hmm. They've invested for many years. They haven't always been with us. Jamie and I were just talking. We don't see a lot of younger families like Jamie and I. We have young children that we're still doing some college saving plans for, and we're still in our early years of investing. But most of the families we see, they've come in, and something that's been true that isn't always true is that annuities were a much more popular thing for an older generation. Mm-hmm. Where their pensions have been set up as an annuity, and so it's been something that it made a lot of sense to them. And a lot of times, for us, when we get there, we have to decide, is this still something that makes sense for them? Because most of the annuities we see have not been what we call annuitized. Mm-hmm. They still are deferred. They're still just sitting there. They're probably out of surrender or close to being out of their surrender period, where the family can actually access the value or maybe cash value that's inside of the annuity that's been built up over time. And so we have to decide, is this something that tax-wise, the tax implications, is this something we want to move out of the annuity, or does it make more sense to leave in? In general, we would like them to be out of the annuity just because they're so dang expensive. And we could invest that same money and probably in a much more cost-efficient way and still get the same results. But at the same time, it's not always the case. Sometimes they've got a cost basis of $25,000 that's inside the policy, and it's grown to $200,000 of cash value. And to roll that out, that's a huge tax implication for the family, where maybe it just doesn't make as much sense to do that. So in the end, every family, when they come in with an annuity, we have to do a deep dive into it, make sure we understand all the ins and outs. There's really three things we can do. Leave it alone. We can surrender it, and potentially do what's called a 1035 transfer into another variable annuity that's much less expensive to maintain, just to kind of lower those costs and give the account a better chance to grow up over time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when we see these annuities, when they're brought into us, you really have to do a deep dive into it, because most of the time people don't buy annuities, they're sold annuities, and they don't really understand what they're buying. And what we find is that the person that sold it to them, they didn't really understand what they were selling either, because annuity contracts can be so complicated. And people are buying these annuities thinking that, like I said, they have this guaranteed income stream that they can turn on when they get to retirement, or some kind of guarantees in there going forward. But what's not talked about is how expensive these annuities are and all of the underlying costs that are inside annuities that nobody talks about. Nobody has pointed it out to them that, yes, you have this guarantee on the annuity, but you're paying for it.
I think a question everybody should always ask with their investments, when you hear guarantee, easy question is, at what cost? Mm-hmm. If it's a guarantee, there's a cost to that. If they're guaranteeing you something in a contract, you better believe that there's a cost to that guarantee. It's not just as good as it sounds. I could walk into, somebody's office, or, somebody could easily walk into our office. And I've seen it many times with new families. They come in it and they're scared. They're worried about losing all their money.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am selling an annuity, it's really easy for me to be like, hey, it's scary out there. I know there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of volatility. What if I could put you into something that has a guaranteed return of 3%? Even if the market's down 10%, you get your 3% return. Doesn't that sound good?
It sounds great.
And that's how they're sold. It's just like that. It's so easy to sell on that. But what they don't know is all the fine print. And like you said, the person selling it most likely doesn't know the fine print either. There's a surrender period. So we've had a lady come in, 80 years old, who put almost $1 million into annuities when her husband became incapacitated. His health was deteriorating. She was very scared, and so her bank put her into almost $1 million of different annuity contracts. She's 80 years old, and this was a 10-year surrender period to get that money. If she wanted to take it out, there's a 10-year surrender period where if she wanted to take her money back, there was a huge penalty in place for that. And so here it is, her money, but now it's locked into a contract where if she wants to take it out, she's going to take a big hit. The reason why is because the person who sells that and the company who's selling that product, they put that surrender period because there's a commission being paid to the person or the company selling it. And that commission gets less and less every year, but up front, there's a huge amount of money. So the person who sold $1 million in an annuity contract took home a lot of money that day when those contracts were created. And so it's nothing against the annuity salesperson because they probably thought they were doing the right thing by her. But at the same time, that in today's world, there's a lot more you can do with $1 million than get it locked up into an annuity contract and still not be penalized if you say, hey, I don't want to work with you anymore and take my money somewhere else. So it's a dangerous product, mostly because the people that are invested in them and selling them don't know what they are.
Sure. But when we do look at these annuity products, what we do know is that on the flip side, not all of them are dangerous.
Sure.
Right? So we're in an environment right now where inflation is so high and interest rates are very, very low. And so the bond market is not as attractive as what it's been in the past 10, 20 years. And we're in an environment where do we put this money that we need to be a little more safe, but still make some kind of return on our investment? Do annuities have a place here today?
I would never say they don't have a place for certain people. I see it more on for families that are extremely wealthy for estate taxes or to get some money out of your estate and move it into an annuity. We're going to talk later about long-term care. If you're in an assisted living facility and you have money inside of an annuity, the assisted living facility can't access that money. It's safe, it's locked up, or it's kind of hidden away. You can defer taxes through an annuity. There's plenty of reasons for why it may make sense for certain people. But overall, I think that there's enough of different types of investment vehicles that have been created now that you can do pretty much everything that you want and still have access to your money, still have the income that you want without having to be locked up into those high fees and expenses. What most people do is they put money into an annuity and they make it a deferred annuity, so they haven't annuitized it. So it's going into there's a couple different types of contracts. So you're going to hear about a fixed annuity, or you're going to hear about a variable annuity. Fixed meaning is that they are giving you a fixed rate of return with maybe a little bit of upside. You might be able to get a couple riders that you can access the money or have access to different things throughout the contract. It might have an inflation rider on there where it increases your fixed rate of return. They're a little bit cheaper because of that fixed. They're not going to be actively managed the same way. Or a variable annuity is much more common what we see, because people are getting in, they have there's a minimum amount that they're going to get, but they've got potential if they invested into it like a highly aggressive model that they're going to get a higher growth on that money, but it's typically capped. So if the market, like last year, the S&P was up 20+%, you could take advantage of some of that gain, but they're probably going to cap you out at about a 10% cap. So even though you're invested in those things, they're not going to let you take advantage of those gains. But the guarantee is that you're not going to also see the downside. Like this year, we're down, at this time of the recording, we're down, somewhere between 5 and 10%. You're not going to feel those losses. So there's the benefit on those years.
Sure.
So there's plenty of reasons to say why it makes sense. But there's, I think, more reasons to say why they don't.
Sure.
That's why, anytime somebody brings one to us, we want to make sure we understand it. We're not going to just say, well, you have an annuity, we're getting you out. No, not necessarily. And that kind of leads to the next topic with annuities is how they're taxed when money comes out, because they're sold by financial institutions but they're not taxed the same way that people might think they are, similar to a life insurance product. So for an annuity, it's a last in, first out in terms of how it's taxed. And what that means is that the growth is considered last in, not the money that you first put in. Where a life insurance contract, like a whole life policy, it's a first in, first out. So you're drawing from the money that you put in, your basis, the tax-free amount, not the growth. So for an annuity, if you want to take that money out, you are going to be taxed first on the growth, and it's taxed at ordinary income rates. It is not taxed as capital gains. So you have this investment, it's been 20 years, you put $25,000 into it, it's grown to $200,000. You're sitting on $175,000 of growth. If that was in a traditional investment account, like a brokerage account, that would be $175,000 taxed at capital gains rates, which are preferential. That $175,000 in an annuity contract is taxed just like your marginal income tax bracket.
Sure.
So it becomes another issue that comes in when you look to surrender a policy.
What about when an annuity is inherited? How's it treated then?
Inherited as far as like a death benefit, it's taxed at the beneficiary's tax, or whatever their marginal tax bracket is.
So not like life insurance.
No, it is not like life insurance. Now there's a death benefit, and so if you have a whole life policy and an annuity contract, you're going to see death benefit on both those contracts, but the death benefit is not tax-free like a life insurance. We've got a family just recently, her husband passed away. He had 3 annuity contracts that's paying her the death benefit. She can do that. She can also annuitize it. She can take it in her name and do nothing with it. So when we have our meeting with her in the next couple of weeks to kind of talk about her options, you could take all this money out now, but guess what? You're going to be taxed on all this growth when you take it. If that makes sense, or if she's okay with that, if in the long term that's what she wants, we can do it. But these are all, every case that comes in is different, and we have to make sure we understand everything before we just say, here we go, let's move forward with the plan. Absolutely.
And having a process in place for this is so important. We have created a checklist on if an annuity makes sense for you or not. There's, sometimes it might make sense, but you really have to consider all of your options. And that's listed out right there on our checklist that you can find on our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. That's something that you can walk through yourself, or if you would like a fiduciary to walk through this with you, you can give us a call at 800-928-4001 and ask for Brittany. She can set you up with a next step meeting where we're going to talk about things that you need to consider today, things to consider in the future, and if you decide to partner with us, what FEG can do for you going forward.